Hi Diana. I'm still working on the Astrodoodle. I'm going to actually highlight that a little bit more over here. Nope. Thanks for hanging out with me. It always makes my life better when I've got some companion here on the show when I do my spontaneous lives. So, all right, well, that's the Astrodoodle for now. We'll come back to it in a minute. I'm just going to say hello. Hi, Diana. So, today we have the moon in Taurus. In my experience with the moon in Taurus, things get kind of soft, mellow. People don't want to be stressed out. They want to enjoy the sensual beauty of life, at least feel it as if there's something there. Go to a movie, relax, take a nap, hang out at an art gallery, go for a walk in nature with animals and trees and plants. Or if you're in the desert, go out into the mountains and away from people. You know, it's a very fleeting transit because it's the moon. But just for this moment, just for now, might as well make the most of it. Just want to point out a couple things on the Astrodoodle. Oh, you're a Taurus. Oh, that's interesting. All right. So with this Astrodoodle, you might recognize something. These are the crisis points, okay? Here, 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 and a little bit here, a little bit here. But I don't know if you've noticed this thing here. It looks, I don't know if you've ever seen a Stanley knife blade, but that's what they look like. They have this shape. When you pull them out and your Stanley knife blade is worn out, you open it up and swap it around and use the brand new end. But anyway, there's some very interesting, very beautiful sacred geometry going on here, where each of these individual crises or crisis points are actually in deep harmony with each other. And so I've been talking about it for quite some time now, and about 2 videos ago, maybe 3, actually it's more than that, but multiple times over recent videos we've been talking about how you have to, oh did you? Oh man, do I owe you one? Let me just check. I wonder, how am I going to find out? Let me see. Give me a second, Diana. See what I can find. Oh dear. Okay, let me just do a quick search. Okay, it's doing some sort of dig. Let's have a look. Give me a second, I'll be right there. Oh, hold on. Oh, it's a $1. It's a payment of $1. And I think I sent her a note the other day saying thank you, because your email shows up here in PayPal. So there. All right. I'm just going to squash this down here a little bit. I'm assuming that's the same Diana. How am I going to do this? Okay, let's go back over here. All right, yeah, I found a donation for $1. So, anyway, let me just carry on with this. I'm just trying to put a little bit of a backstory to where we are today. So all of these little circular things, I just highlighted them in my own way as crisis points, okay? Each in their own way. We've talked about all of them many, 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 many times over. This one is all about the elites, the plutocrats, the Pluto in Capricorn component of society that is under heavy retrograde pressure at the 29-degree mark for Capricorn coming very soon. So that represents the corporate elite of the elites of the elites. I call it the elites. But it's basically at the very top, the Bank of International Settlements, the United States Federal Reserve banking system, United States federal government, all the support systems and the policy enforcers like mainstream media, the local government, the Federal Reserve Bank and the banking system. They have all crafted an extremely, in some ways, extremely successful pyramid of power, and they just want more and more and more and more, and they're starting to realize it's actually become very precarious, like it's reached the end of its shelf life in terms of astrology. And so that's terrifying to the elites, because the only thing they care about is power, money, and control, and more and more and more of it, because they're hollow people, and it can never be satisfied. They can never, ever enjoy the healing power of love, or anything that remotely relates to compassion, empathy, loving and being loved, caring, trusting, and so on. Because they've abandoned all that in order to have access to what they really want, which is power and money and control. And they've had to stoop to some very nefarious ways to get that. Usually through deception, lies, betrayal, fraud, blackmail, murder, corruption, and every nefarious, unhealthy expression of Neptune energy. So they're working very, very closely together. It's retrograde as well. It's also with Saturn here in Pisces retrograde. It's an indication that if you really, really want to mess with energy, divine energy, the energy of heaven, the energy of universal love, and if you think you can override it and control nature and turn it to your favor so that you can exploit it at the expense of someone else, there will be consequences, very negative consequences. Stretching out over to here, we've got a broad stress point here. Mars and Uranus were very tight together, and a few months ago it was all about the explosion all over the global headlines about global financial chaos, and we're already living through that. It's now in full display. The point crisis that we have here is Jupiter in Gemini, which is hard squaring, and it's going to continue to hard square the Saturn and Neptune stuff. So there's a lot going on there. I will come to that in a second. Over here, the Sun is in Leo. It's actually opposing Pluto in Aquarius, because Pluto's technically there in Aquarius, but it's really right on the cusp. So this is a very severe opposition. It closely resonates with the United States, because the United States has a Leo North Node and an Aquarius South Node. And it's displaying how derelict the United States has become, and sloppy and lazy and just swirling in the cesspool of its South Node of beautiful Aquarian energy gone wrong, abused. Instead of being the shining, bright, inspiring leader, unapologetically amazing place that we are. So all of that's happening simultaneously, but if you look at the big green shape here, this, that's all in deep harmony with itself and each other, and it's supported by girders over here and here. So what I've noticed is that there's a tremendous amount of everything that we talked about already, which is all the deception, betrayals, lies, fraud, crime, perversion, sickness, the pedophiles, the Epstein Islands, the child sex trafficking, the drug abuse, the fentanyl, the suicide rate, the death rate, the sickness, the hospitalization, bug number 19, the bug with the birds, and more bugs to come, and so on. All that expression of evil presented as though it's there to save the world, okay? That's the ultimate in fraud, deception, lies, and betrayal, to enhance the elites at the expense of us, the peasants, we the people. So that's all happening simultaneously, but it's mostly been happening behind the veil of deception. And now that veil of deception is in heavy, heavy retrograde at the crisis point. So the veil is opening up, and anything that can go wrong will go wrong for those people who abuse the beauty of Pisces, Neptune, 12th house energy. So that's what's happening. So on a global scale, we are getting a massive, massive, gotta reveal it to heal it situation. The thing is, it's impossible to heal it unless you can reveal it and name it, put words to it, identify it, resonate with our three-dimensional, finite, limited, worldly consciousness, instead of just having a fuzzy feeling that there's something very sick with people right now, with humanity, with politicians, bankers, leaders, and so on. So it's happening live, real time, and it's impossible not to see it unless you're deliberately choosing to avoid being informed. We're closing in on the end of July, so we've already been living through a lot of crisis points. These are the two big ones over here. Well, there's three actually. There's Neptune, Pluto, and Saturn. They are still here, ongoing, here, here, and here. These three blobs correlate to this, this, and this. There, so there. Now, we are here at the 27th, okay? So literally in a few days, we're going to be at the cusp of Mercury retrograde, stationary. So in the next week or so, please be aware that it's very likely that you're going to see a lot of the characteristics of Mercury retrograde starting to unfold. Okay? Mercury will be in Virgo. It's pretty much starting in Virgo today, as you can see here. Mercury likes Virgo. Mercury is the ruling planet of Virgo. But when it goes retrograde, it's not quite there yet, but eventually there's going to be a big fat R over here, and it's going to go from Virgo back into Leo. So that's going to affect all these people who have strong Leo components in their charts. Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, America, Obama, and others. Also, well, Leo, well, it's in a way it's not surprising. It's the energy of leadership. And a conflicted Leo is really not something you want. I would avoid that at all costs. It would be the energy of arrogance, bombacity, complete narcissism gone out of control, Napoleon complexes, emperor complex, and so on and so on. Anyway, so with this big fat green piece of beautiful sacred geometry here, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, because what it's actually doing in terms of the astrology and what I think of as the geomagnetic influence of the planets, it's actually allowing the full extent of the evil to be presented on the world stage. And so I'm going to go to the very last component of all my notes here before I get back into the other stuff. So I got all these notes, right? Okay, I got all that. And I got all this. There's China, of course. And then there's this. The Olympics. I mean, within the moment it started, it was a complete shocker, and it sent shockwaves across the world. This massive display of satanic imagery, because that's what it's being called, because that's what it is. It's being called out across the world, all across the world. The whole of the world is watching, and most people, the majority, from what I can tell, in terms of governments, country leaders, pundits, and certainly like conservative Christians and people like that, and people who just prefer to have simple common sense and decency in their lives, it's just created a massive outrage. So even though it was a spectacular spectacle, as sick as it was, the French government has realized that they really, really, really screwed up. The Olympics is in France, and Macron is one of the leaders over there, and Macron is a subscriber to the World Economic Forum and all the satanic pedophiles that run all this stuff. And so he's been outed in the whole country, not the country, but because a lot of French people find this disgusting as well. But anyway, it's being called out across the world, and the French government right now, live real time, is doing everything it can to scrub every piece of social media that shows the Olympic opening event. Because they're going to try and go in denial and pretend that it doesn't exist and never existed. Makes sense? Does that make sense to you? In other words, we had the big reveal. We had the big reveal it to heal it. And it's so disgusting, so squalid. In other words, it's the stench of dead bodies, rotten. It's the worst aspect of unhealthy, negative Neptune, Pisces, 12th house energy. It's the worst. It's pure evil. It's the worship of evil. It's the adoration of evil and the abandonment of love. So that's what we're seeing. And that's being broadcast across the world, and it's already in a deep, deep mitigation process because France really screwed up. Of course, there's some people who think it's fantastic. Oh, it's our moment in the spotlight. It's our time to shine. Look at us. Look at me. So, anyway, all the people who celebrate and enjoy that kind of stuff, I just wish they would mind their own business and do it in their own private homes, in their bathrooms, their toilets, their bedrooms, and wherever they do their stuff, rather than try to impose it on 8 billion people around the world. Because most people are not interested. In fact, not interested. They just don't want it because there's a consensus that it's evil. Most people don't want evil in their lives. But anyway, I just wanted to call that one out. Now, there's something very similar regarding the theme that I just mentioned here. In terms of you've got to reveal it to heal it, and the aberrations and the distortions of reality. In other words, perception is reality. Actually, let me go over here because I don't have to keep repeating it. Actually, just make a note here. This big fat green system here, it's very beautiful, very sublime, harmonious, but it happens to include these very, very treacherous, very difficult points of crisis. Now, at the same time, we do have genuinely harsh aspects. With the moon in Taurus as it is, great, that's fine, it's beautiful. I love moon in Taurus. It's in a very, very hard square with Pluto and the Sun. And I believe that's going to refer directly to the global financial system and the deep, deep, deep fear that is now resonating at the core, the very foundations of the global financial system, as the elites, the banks, the Federal Reserve, the United States Treasury, the Chinese Communist Party, China, Europe, the Eurozone, every other currency on earth is starting to realize that the foundations of their currency and consequently the foundations of their economies are in deep, deep distress, because this is what's happening. Think of that. It's the Uranus and Taurus, highly unstable, volatile energy here in the global financial system. And then there's the Moon in Taurus. Now, in about a day and a half, the Moon is going to conjoin Taurus. So I'll be watching for major global headlines about even more and more global financial catastrophic events. But anyway, go back to this triangle and this hard square here. This hard square here is between Gemini and Pisces. They are naturally squared energies, okay? But it's becoming very, very tight between Saturn and Gemini. So what that's going to do, it's going to expose, because Saturn's retrograde, it's going to expose anything and everything that can go wrong with communications. In other words, very, very big, very, very grandiose communications. In other words, what happened at the Olympics, what's happening in American politics, with Kamala, for example, relative to reality, where Saturn in Pisces is basically saying, okay, well, if you choose to communicate such absolute sewage, filth, lies, fraud, betrayal, and deception, there will be consequences. Jupiter expands the consequences. And so the people who are enjoying and exploiting this beautiful green energy here, they're going to suffer a very serious backlash, okay? At some point, it's going to backfire really badly, and to assist in that process, Mercury's going to go retrograde. So right through August, you can expect an absolute shit show when it comes to global communications regarding one of the most obvious examples is going to be the Kamala Harris nomination anointment here in America. You've probably noticed that the mainstream media, which is in the service of the corporate elites, which is in the service of the banks, and the federal government, they all work to serve the elites at the top of the elites. In other words, who does Obama work for? Obama works for the money, okay? He's worth many, 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 many millions. When he was president, he only got paid this much. So where does that money come from? Well, it's bribery, betrayal, deception, lies, backroom insider trading, and on and on and on and on. Making money by selling out America, by allowing the, let's say, destruction of America, enabling the destruction of America from within, the enemy within. So that energy is extremely active right now. And so what's happened if you've watched, okay, let's leave the chart for a minute, hold on. Excuse me. All right, I'm going to move over here. So, I think most people know my positions and how I feel about stuff like that. I just feel like I'm coming from a common sense position. And I watch both sides, both folks, both, let's say, teams, you know. And I like to break it down into tyranny versus freedom, as opposed to Donald versus Joe or Democrat versus Republican. I think it's much more existential than that. It's right to the core of human experience in terms of one of the most fundamental requirements for a healthy life and happiness, which is to be free, to be free to be who you are, your own distinct individual self, according to your DNA, your biological DNA, your astrological DNA, all of it. We're all unique. In the American Constitution, it is constituted that we have the right to be who we are, say what we think and feel, believe whatever we want to believe. And that's freedom. And we have the right to contest each other. And we have the right and the duty and the obligation to support the Constitution, to maintain those freedoms, because if we do not maintain the freedoms, they will be stolen from us. And the thieves are among us right now, and they are at the very end stages of believing that they're going to prevail. I can pretty much guarantee that they will not prevail. I believe in the end the healing power of love will prevail, because inside the United States, which is enemy number one to the globalists, there are enough people who are willing to stand up and fight. What that looks like, nobody knows at this point. The last time this happened was around 1776. Pluto has come full circle. Anyway, so the thing is, here we are today. Everybody is aware worldwide. We called it out months ago. We all knew that there were going to be major global crises and events and headlines when Mars transits over Uranus, and it's already moving on. And the big crisis, of course, was the assassination attempt of Donald, simultaneously with global financial crises, China, the USA, the Federal Reserve banking system, the fiat global money system, all of it. So that's happening live in real time. And then there's, of course, the fallout, because a lot of people feel that the assassination attempt was not just some random kid going out to become famous on some kind of martyrdom, trippy journey. I'm going to be the most ultimate, notorious, famous shooter, bad person of all time. My personal feeling is that he was groomed by the deep state, and there's a lot of evidence to support that, but I'm not going to go into that here. Groomed by the deep state and exploited and used by the deep state to create and basically execute an assassination that would appear as though it's some wacky young kid with a gun who hates Donald. And within moments of all of that happening, I don't know if any of you saw it live, but I pretty much did within 20 minutes. It was global outrage, okay? And by outrage, I am including all the people who declared this is an inside job. In other words, the United States, American deep state, the cabal, the globalist elites, they realized that after the big CNN debate, whenever that was, very early July, late June, where Grandpa Joe basically fumbled and stumbled, and Donald was just completely obliterated the whole event. That all went according to the plan. The deep state deliberately put Joe on display to let the world know that Joe hasn't got it anymore. So Joe was being heavily abused by the deep state. In other words, exploited as a useful idiot. And Team Obama knew that that was going to happen, and that the world would call for him to step down, which is what they want. But the thing is, there's laws, there's Congress, there's Constitution, there's a Supreme Court and all of that. You can't just kind of go, Joe, go away, we're going to replace you. So they had to stage everything. And so that went very, very well. And there was I think it was a 10-day period during which it became the next step for the deep state. Okay, we got that. We've got it all lined up and planned out. in the next few months, we're going to gradually take Joe off the main stage and replace him with the right person at the right time. And now that we've done all that, the only other obstacle we have to making sure that we can maintain control and all the power and the money and control on November 5th is that we cannot afford to waste any kind of ambiguity here. We actually have to remove Donald, okay? So we're going to plan that. That's the next thing to happen. Once we've got Joe off the stage, replacement getting up in line, prepped, all prepped up and rehearsed for that. We have to remove Donald, and then bang! That's easy. Poof! And so there comes July 13th. And there's the very amateur security event that went on. Let's say, what was it really, like a security exercise. And the thing is, my feeling is that it was very staged, very orchestrated, all by the deep state, with multiple shooters, different directions, guaranteed to take out Donald in case Mr. Crooks screwed up. So we've all seen all of that. You've seen all the conspiracy videos, shooter behind the bleachers, shooter on the water tower, shooter over on the gym, shooter inside the window behind Crooks, and all this kind of stuff, just to make sure. And then in real time, what we have is the sharpshooter snipers on the roof who actually take out Crooks. 2 shots. One through the neck, one through the head. Gone. The problem is, they missed. They missed. And Donald is now today more powerful than ever before. And so, of course, that sent everything into absolute chaos. Remember, all this amazing staging and planning and theater, it's like watching a movie, okay? This is better than any movie you could ever watch. So all the crisis points are being exploited by the elites. But when you exploit energy to that extreme, believing that you have absolute control over nature, the planets, heaven, that's a little bit, to me, that's a mark of insanity or narcissism or lust for power, money, and control. So that's going on. And I believe the deep state was so convinced that they were going to have a successful execution that they were left in a state of shock when it didn't actually happen. And then, of course, there's the declarations that God's hand was on Donald's head and his shoulder and just moved, and so on and so on. We know all of that now. And we know that there is going to be a very deep dive committee to investigate what actually happened, who's going to be held accountable, heads will roll. How did Biden let this happen? How did Cheadle let all this happen? How did the FBI, how did the CIA, how did the Secret Service let all this happen? Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. It was all planned out. It was a deep state execution that backfired. Neptune, Saturn, and Pluto retrograde. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong, and it went wrong very badly. So there will be some sort of accountability, maybe not in Congress, but in terms of the way the world evolves. Because these last few weeks, well, since the Mars-Uranus conjunction especially, a few months up to that, and now we're going to have a few months after that, it's all become one massive global headline. Because what's happening is affecting everybody on Earth. So, I guess the point I'm trying to reach is that you have to understand and accept that everything is perfect. Everything is exactly as it should be. And how and why is that so? It's because it can't be any other way. Things are the way they are. There was an assassination attempt. It did get screwed up. People saw it live. The deep state was convinced it was going to work, but it didn't. All of that is real. The Olympics was real. The deep state panic, removing Joe, that's real. Replacing Joe, that's real. Even if it completely insults and undermines the Constitution and 14 million Democrat voters who've basically gone like, well, wait a minute. We haven't had a vote yet. We haven't had the Democrat National Convention. Some of us don't want Kamala, and so on and so on. Imagine if you're a deep state lefty communist and you want somebody else. You don't want Kamala. What are you going to do? Donald Trump is already suing Kamala and the DNC for theft, stealing $90 million from the donors, so on and so on and so on. And to keep the whole charade going, the deep state has been going in serious overdrive, trying to remake history. In other words, present Kamala as the next savior of the world, the best candidate possible, the one with the best track record. It's insanity. She's basically been a puppet all the time. Mostly she is ridiculed across the world. Nobody takes her seriously that I know of. Cackling Kamala is the popular phrase. And then, of course, there's the optical illusions around Joe himself. At last count, some of the conspiracy folks are saying there's at least 4 Joe Bidens now. There's Joe himself, which a lot of people feel is very, very sick, if not dead. There's a couple other Joes, and there's the Joe we saw the other day when he walked out of the White House with Jill. And in real life, Joe is about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches taller than Jill. All right? And you take into account their basic shoes. But this was ridiculous. Jill is in high heels. Joe is in flat loafers. And Joe is about 6'6". Everybody could see it. But I think that the Hollywood deep state ran out of Grandpa Joe's stand-ins and stunt doubles and silicone mask teams, that they had no choice to put this guy out there, even though they were like this, like, God, I hope people don't notice that this guy is like 5 inches taller than the real Joe. But people figured it out. I mean, it just, this is insanity. It's insanity what's actually happening. But this is the reality. Yeah. So, the beauty of this, the way I see it, I was talking to Love Triber early today, and I tried to condense it into some sort of very simplistic rationale to explain all this insanity. And from my perspective, it still is very simple. You have to reveal it to heal it. Nature is what it is. It will naturally heal itself. And humanity, people want to heal themselves. There's a lot of people in a lot of pain, billions of people in a lot of pain in the world right now, and they want healing, and they know that they have a better chance of healing if some of the problems at the top of the pile of the global elites can be addressed. And what a lot of people are realizing across the world is that the people who present themselves as the ultimate authorities of trust, integrity, power, and money and control, in other words, trust me, I can save you, or vote for me and I will save you, doesn't always actually work out that way. And so the public are they're either going like this, I can't believe what's happening, or my life is turned into so much shit, I don't know what to do. But there are some people who are basically observing, and they're realizing, my God, this is actually beautiful. It's about time we had the big reveal. Not just a glimpse behind the curtain or suspicions or conspiracy theories about what is behind the veil of deception. We're going to rip open that veil of deception. We want to see it all. And that's what's happening right now. So in the Olympic debacle is the best example so far, really. A bunch with the others that I've just mentioned. But That Olympic thing yesterday, or was it today or yesterday? That was just spectacular in terms of a global reveal. There it was on mainstream media all across the world. Hey, this is the Olympics. We're all in this together. No borders, no boundaries, no racism. Boys and girls, it doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. Doesn't matter. It's all one beautiful thing. Huh? No, not quite. So, people needed to see that. The world needed to see that in order to actually wake up, Uranus, wake up, Uranus, behind the veil. You cannot unsee what you just saw. France is trying to unsee it and rewrite history like, oh, that never happened. That was just some stupid rehearsal from a bunch of nutcases on a riot. No, that was real. The Olympic body decided to do that, and France allowed it to happen. They enabled it to happen. That tells you how sick things are in this world. But we need to know that. Not just a handful of conspiracy theorists and some pundits and a few whack jobs like TarotLumination calling things out like, because the planet's doing this and the planets are doing that, people are going to be like this and like... No. You don't have to know anything about astrology to see how sick this is. We need to see it. It has to be revealed for the healing. You got to reveal it to heal it, and that's what's happening. So in that context, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Another way to see it is like we are seeing, but it involves the whole senses. Our body, our mind, our heart, and our souls are convulsing, vomiting right now. Body, mind, heart, and soul vomiting at what we're witnessing because it is so sick. It's just like the same thing that happens when you're just living your life and you come across a dead animal or a dead person and unexpectedly and you think, oh my God, that's terrible. Ooh, what should I do? Blah. That's what happens if you've ever been around dead bodies. So some people are conditioned, they're used to it, but if they're professionals with that stuff. But anyway, you got to reveal it to heal it, and the great revealing is happening live right now on the global stage. So to me, in some ways, I'm very, very grateful. Because sometimes I really think, like, my God, I really am insane. Am I the one who's insane? And then I need validation. I need validation to prove to myself that I'm not stupid. And so when I'm calling it out, like, I need to see certain global headlines that validate my own perceptions. And even looking forward, with some parts of the astrology, we can look way forward and look very, very deep and call out certain themes. And lo and behold, kapoof, we nailed it, okay? And hopefully we'll continue to do so. So I wanted to bring out those things. Okay, right now, I'm going to just jump into my little notes here. I've got kind of the main theme over. Hey, Jessica, I owe you one. I don't know if you've been around for a while, but I've got your magic post-it note posted here in the studio for you. So maybe you can come and visit us on Sunday night. I don't plan on doing any readings right now today unless you really, really need it right now. So, I got my notes. All right, so I think we mentioned this already about Kamala the movie. You can't make up this stuff. It would take 100 screenwriters, the best in the world, to write the movie that we're witnessing right now. Did you also see the completely insane endorsement of Kamala by Michelle and Barack? And they filmed the whole thing as though it was just like a random phone call where Kamala is walking down the corridors of power and bling, 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 bling. Oh, hello, Barack. Oh, hi, Michelle. Oh, thank you so much. I don't know about you, but I saw it and I gagged. I literally almost threw up. It was so embarrassing. So staged. I know a lot of politics is theater, but this is taking it to the next level. Yeah, okay. Or we can do something in the week or whatever if you want to schedule something. Okay, I don't know if you noticed this other thing. I'm going through all my notes. There's a lot of contention around the world. Jews versus Arabs, Islamic extremists versus Zionist extremists, Israel versus Palestine, Israel versus Gaza, Israel versus Lebanon and Iran and Yemen and all the Arab states. But you have to remember there's a lot of Arab states that want Israel to prevail, even though they're Arabs. There's a reason for all of that, but that's another video. So anyway, because Kamala was, and will continue to be so inept, incompetent, she would not meet up with Netanyahu, the PM guy from Israel. So she was basically doing this to Israel, which she does anyway. And Joe was effectively doing this to Israel because it was all scheduled, but they decided not to show up. Meanwhile, Netanyahu arrives. A couple of people say hello off the airplane, admin staff or something. And Netanyahu basically says, you know what? Yeah, Donald, sure, I'd be glad to hang out with you. I'd rather talk with you anyway. I don't trust these other people in Washington. So basically, for a while, Washington, D.C., the Oval Office, moved down to Florida at Mar-a-Lago. And the whole thing was staged over there. Talk about the middle finger to Washington. Donald's already operating as if he's president. I don't know if you noticed. It's very, very infuriating for the Democrat Party right now. They don't know what to do. They're twisting in their knickers. So I thought that was kind of funny. Also, the other thing about, deception, betrayal, mainstream media, perception is reality, all that kind of stuff. You've probably noticed how we're getting this mind-boggling barrage of happy stuff about Kamala all over the mainstream media to present to the world that Kamala is this highly gifted, outstanding person who is going to replace Joe and going to be the most important president of all time. She calls herself black and she's female, so just imagine that. The first black female president. Ha ha! The problem is that her track record does not correlate with what the mainstream media is presenting. And a lot of people have figured that out already. A lot of people are going like, that's not Kamala, she's a hardcore liberal communist. She's not a border. She was a border czar, but the last thing she does is protect the border. She's trying to destroy America, filling Joe's shoes. So what's this ridiculous stuff coming out in the media? I think it's hilarious. And my feeling is when Mercury goes retrograde for real, it's going to backfire really, really badly on Kamala. That's my personal opinion. Especially when it gets into, I think, is it Mercury? Let me just check here. Yeah, when we get into the middle of August and Mercury retrograde goes from Virgo back into Leo, that's when I think it's going to get really bad. So over the next, let's just call it the next 3 or 4 weeks, okay? So might as well just enjoy the show. Okay, I told you about Joe and how he suddenly grew to 6'6". The other thing that was very strange, I haven't seen absolute proof, but some people were showing with a ticking clock that Jill Biden was in Paris for the Olympics exactly the same time that she walked out of the White House with 6'6" Joe. Is there a body double for Jill? Are we in a time warp? Anyway, just wanted to mention that. Here's another thing that's very interesting. I put this up on my X. There's something called Polymarkets. And what it is, it's basically a global betting site for big issues. Like, who's going to win the White House? Is China going to win the war? World War III? Are we going to have World War III or not? And what happens is, big players put down big bets, like in the stock market. Okay? And the thing is, like, the people with this kind of money making these kind of bets, they probably have different protocols than someone like myself, because I can't do these kind of bets, obviously. But if somebody has that kind of money and they're willing to place those kind of bets, it's very strange, because what Polymarkets is showing, you can actually check this out yourself. What Polymarkets is showing is like one of the biggest bets in the world right now is Donald going to win, or is someone else going to win? If Donald wins, is that going to be good for business and financing the American economy, or is it going to be bad? Is it going to be Donald versus Kamala? Is Kamala going to win? All these multiple variations on these bets. And sometimes some of it involves astronomical amounts of money, not just what you see in a Las Vegas casino. Anyway, Mark Moss was pointing out that these bets are very powerful indicators of where the money's going. Follow the money. Follow the money. And a huge percentage of the money is coalescing around Donald. Whether you like that or not, it's coalescing around Donald, because these people who are placing these very big bets, I think they're betting on truth ultimately coming out, reality unfolding, and the charade and debacle with Kamala will eventually implode in its own stupidity. And then Donald will walk in and just do what he does, you know. Hi, Sarah. So I thought that was very interesting, because it's okay for people like me to talk like, oh, this, I'm going to do that, like conspiracy this, globalist that, elites, Federal Reserve, you know, the economy's collapsing, when, how much, I don't know. But when people are putting enormous bets, that's a whole other thing. Yeah, maybe they can afford to lose, but they're hoping to win. So with such a huge, let's say, lean towards Donald, that's what the big money is betting. What Mark Moss is saying is that there's probably a correlation between the big money and what's actually going to happen in reality. In other words, those big money people know something that we don't. Something to think about, okay? It's called Polymarkets. You can look it up. The other thing, I don't know if you've noticed this, I like watching these money shows where you go deep dive into the world of money. Not the mainstream media TV shows, buy this, buy that, but the actual mechanisms inside the Federal Reserve Bank and the global banking system. Because that is basically the heart, the pumping lungs, blood, kidneys, liver, intestines, second brain of the world. The banks, the banking system, and the currency. A bank is a bank. Think of what a bank is, like a river bank. It contains water. What is that water? It's a current. It's a currency. Banks contain the currency. Okay? And the banks want it to work as well as possible for themselves. Anyway, the banks are falling apart. Correlating stories. Look what's happening in China with all the flooding. Hundreds of millions of people displaced, lives, farms, businesses, animals, friends, family, dead or ruined. It correlates. The banks are eroding. You can't stop it. Thinking you can defy nature, which is what the CCP does with its enormous places like the Three Gorges Dam. They believe, the CCP believes it is above God, above nature. Anyway, so given that context, once you understand that it's all a big smoke and mirrors, just a big pile of smoke and mirrors, we all can see how the S&P 500, the Dow, and the NASDAQ were just going up and 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 up, and how that correlates exactly to the money supply going up and 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 up, which correlates exactly with what the Federal Reserve banking is doing, buying all the debt, allowing the market go up and up and up and up, and issuing more and more and more and more and more currency, flooding the banks. Get it? Flooding the banks, bursting the banks, because the banks are already blown, and they're trying to salvage the banks right now. China's banking system is imploding, collapsing now live real time in trillions. Okay? So, given that also on the understanding that those three core index markets, the S&P 500, the Dow, and the NASDAQ, they correlate almost exactly with what the Federal Reserve Bank does. Okay? Well, some people say it's like the most easy, stupid, dumb play to win, to go big. In other words, you just buy the Dow, you buy the S&P, you buy the NASDAQ, and you just sit back and wait. Every time it dips a little bit, buy more. Dips, buy more. Dips, buy more. And just let it go up and up and up and up. But here's the story now. Here's the really interesting part of the story. The big people, the big investors, the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, the State Streets, the Fidelities, the big corporate conglomerates worldwide, all the CEOs and the major top-level AAA shareholders, they know this is coming to some kind of cataclysmic ending. They know that if they all try to cash out of the market simultaneously, it'll destroy their wealth within a matter of 36 hours, 48 hours. So what are they doing? They're sneaking around in the background, slowly but incrementally selling off millions and millions and millions and millions of their own shares to cash out, and then they go off and do things like hide it, or buy gold, or buy something solid of great value like an extremely expensive masterpiece painting work of art, something like that, and then they own it and they keep it and they stuff it in their vault at home, because those things will retain their value up to a point. It'll be a store of value. But the big players also know that the currency is a facade. It's fiat money. So they know that this phenomenon going up and 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 up, it's going to go. And so what they're trying to do is cash out at the top before it goes. The thing is, at that level, people get very, very greedy, and they think, I'll just wait a little bit longer. I'm just wait a little bit longer before I cash out. And then other people are saying, you know what, it's going to go much sooner than you think. I'm cashing out now, even though it might still go up a couple of points. But greed is what it is. So anyway, there comes a point where it reaches the point of no return, and it just goes. And from my perspective, that's inevitable. Now, it might not go like in one day, but it's going to go over maybe an extended period of time. And as that happens, it means like people's savings plans, their pensions, their 401ks, their retirements, all of those things go from here to here. If you're heavily invested in all that stuff, you have to be aware that it's going to go pop. right? It's unrealized wealth. It's only a piece of paper. It's only a digit in a computer until it's realized. To realize that wealth, you have to sell out. You have to cash out. Take your cash money in your E-Trade, TD Ameritrade, or whatever it is, TradeView or something, and then put that into cash numbers in your bank account, and then suck that out as fast as you can, because the banks themselves are in deep jeopardy. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just sharing information that I've learned, okay? So it's happening. Now, the reason I watched, I'm just going to keep going on about the money stuff for a little bit. Let me switch to other things, and I'll come back to the money. So that's what's happening right now. Quietly, very, very quietly in the background, upper high level CEOs, politicians, banks, banksters, they're selling. They're selling out, they're cashing out because they can't take the risk anymore. They have to cash out while it's big, while it's good. And then once that starts to turn this way, it's typically a death spiral to the bottom. All you have to do is see what's happening in China. I'll come back to that stuff. Okay. So, everything I mentioned about the crisis points in the astrology is multiplied many times in China. It's crisis on top of crisis, 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 crisis. At the very, very top, it's the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party itself. It's in a state of deep crisis because they know, Mr. Ping knows, that China is imploding live, real time, economically. It's dying. You can measure it. You can actually see it in the charts. It's dying. And the CCP only cares about one thing, preserving itself, continuity of government, and so on and so on. So that's what they're doing. They're basically stealing anything and everything they can from the existing retail banks and the state banks, sucking it out by fraud, theft, lies, betrayal, and leaving the public stranded, broke, betrayed, with nothing. It's happening on a massive scale. Millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people in China are getting destroyed live right now. One of the reasons that's happening is because the rest of the world outside China doesn't want to get sucked into the black hole, doesn't want to get sucked down the drain live, real time with China. So they're pulling out of China while they can. If they can, any way, shape, or what form, they're getting out of China, extracting whatever they got before China goes down the drain, literally. And that's putting tremendous pressure on the Chinese yuan currency. A lot of Chinese people are trying to get out of China and take their remaining yuan currency with them. Mr. Ping knows that, and he's trying to stop that from happening, because if they leave, he can't steal it. That's a huge crisis. The yuan is imploding. And if you think America is printing big bucks really, really fast, buying up all the debt, China is doing it on a much grander scale. It's kind of like what happened in Argentina, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Germany, World War II, that kind of stuff. It's the end. That's what happens. The government gets desperate, so they just print money. The reality is they can hardly pay their soldiers any money. They can hardly feed their soldiers. Most of the main top elites, the CCP, are losing their wealth. All of it was stolen anyway, but it's disappearing. And that, to me, parallels the actual physical tragedies in China. The floods. Think of Neptune, think of Saturn, both in Pisces retrograde. Catastrophic. It's just devastation in China. You should, if you do your own research, and you'll see what I mean. So the flood crisis, that's not something anybody can fix. The damage is already done. All the cities were built believing they could ignore floods and flooding in nature. And now it's coming back to bite them. Wait till Mercury retrograde comes in. It's going to get even worse for China. So on top of that, because of the natural disasters, there's a food crisis. Rice, wheat, soy, pigs, fruits, vegetables. It's all getting, a lot of it is getting destroyed. If you're up in northern China, it's drought, and so the crops are minimal. If you're in southern China, it's getting drowned out. It's terrifying. Right now, it's probably more, but we already just had 40 banks, 40 big banks just collapse inside China. They don't have any cash, and so there's a run on the bank, and people are trying to get their cash out, but they can't. This is still early days. There's a lot more crisis to follow. The next obvious one, which we knew was inevitable, is the foreclosures in the real estate market. You know, Evergrande and what are the other big ones? Big real estate scams. And so they're going, do you remember what happened in 2008 with all the foreclosures around America? Houses that were on the market for $500,000, they couldn't even sell for $100,000. And then they went into foreclosure, and the banks take it. And then the people who got sucked into the nightmare, a lot of the people who bought these houses on very dodgy, sketchy loans, ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages, and so on, that was the great financial crisis, 2008, 2009. That happened exactly when Pluto in Sagittarius went into Pluto in Capricorn, the crisis degree. Boom. So what happened is there were millions of foreclosures all across America. And the owners of those houses that went into foreclosures were so bitter and so angry, they thought, you know what? If the bank is going to take this house away from me and going to resell it to someone else at a lower price for cash, I'm not going to let them do that. And so they go in and they destroy their house. They burn it down. They rip out all the fixtures and fittings, making the house worthless, uninhabitable. But it still might look sort of okay on the outside. That's now happening in China, but it's on a much, much bigger scale. Also in China, they don't have bankruptcy protection laws for citizens. So you're screwed. The citizens are screwed. They're being forced to pay mortgages on properties that don't exist or went from this sticker price value to this sticker price value. And even at this value, they can't sell. If people are trying to sell just to get a little bit of cash and get out, it's still not happening. So the crisis is going to get worse. I'm watching China because I see it as a weather vane for the whole world. The United States can survive these things because we literally print our way out of it because we can, and we export our inflation to the rest of the world. China can't do that. Nobody wants the yuan because the yuan is going like this. It cannot even save itself. It's very tragic. It's very, very tragic for hundreds of millions of Chinese people. And the same thing is happening with other countries as well. Okay, last, I'm just going to go through these quickly. Over in Europe, we know about the Russia, China, North Korea, Iran axis that's all coalescing around the Ukraine-Russia war, which is basically another yes, no, in, out, good, bad, tyranny, freedom, Pluto crisis situation. That's happening in Europe right now, and there's a line right down the middle. On one side is Russia, translation tyranny. On the other side it's NATO, translation freedom. I don't buy either of it, frankly, but that's how it's playing out. It's the polarization of these two energies. Right now, the Sun is opposed to Pluto. You cannot get a bigger polarity. That's the biggest polarity, and it's happening live right now. So what's happening is, follow the money. Europe, the Euro, NATO, and in some ways the US and the US dollar, they all want war because that's the only way out. Then they can create a war economy and justify the printing of new money. We'll go to war and we'll keep the war machine going, and it's great for the banks. War is big, big money for the banks. Costs a lot of money to go to war at the expense of the people. So that's kind of what's happening over there right now. Also the same thing with the Middle East. These are bankers' wars. The banks want this. The globalists want this to happen. They want their enormous military-industrial complex members to make billions and billions of dollars from war. And if there's a bunch of dead people, that's just collateral damage. It's like, well, that's what you have to deal with when you're trying to make money. Oh well, anyway. So the war machine is getting bigger and bigger and louder and more vicious. It's the same thing over with China, Taiwan, and the Western Pacific. Same thing. Follow the money. But again, we've never been here before because in the background of the background of the background, some of those folks have the nuclear button. So it makes it very, very difficult to proceed because anytime someone proceeds and says, you know, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. I'm going to take you out. Boom. Well, it's sort of like this, like, poof. I dare you to hit me back. Poof, poof. And the other person says, well, I don't know if this is a good idea because if I hit you back, you really want me to hit you back? I could just nuke you. And then the other aggressor says, well, I could nuke you back. But if you nuke me first, then you're the oppressor, and then I have the right to do whatever I have to do to take you out. And then you take that storyline, flip it around, and it just becomes a dogfight. You know, it's just, once they taste blood, they just go, to one of them's dead. That's the end of it. Horrible, 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 horrible. But when it comes to betting and the military-industrial complex, continuity of government, it's big, big, big money. So anyway, I've shared... Where did my notes? Okay, I shared my notes. I just wanted to keep people informed so that you can understand what's happening out there is perfect. Everything is exactly as it should be. It's just that, how does it affect you? How does that make you feel? Where do you stand? What are your perceptions? Do your perceptions comport with your beliefs? In other words, oh, I always thought I was this kind of person and I was going to vote like this, and then you realize, wait a minute, now that I've learned this, I can't vote that way. I'm going to have to do this or that. Oh, man. And it's really, really hard for a lot of people, mostly because we're dealing with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. We handle it here because we're just taking a neutral observation. But it affects people at the depths of your heart and soul in ways that you don't even understand that it's happening. It's beyond perception. It's happening to the whole world simultaneously. It's not just a little personal thing like on a personal chart. Oh, I'm having my Saturn return. Oh, I've just had my Jupiter return. Oh, no. This is on a whole other scale. It's the whole freaking world, okay? Anyway, I'm going to duck out now, and I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. And I hope you enjoyed this. Get something out of it. Stay informed and so on. So, take care. And look after yourselves. Be loving. Be loved. You can ask for the healing power of love to fill your body, your mind, your heart, and soul from up above. The next step is be loving, be loved. It really helps you. Really, you have to own it in advance. You can't just preach it like a hollow person. You have to deliberately commit to the healing power of love and understand that it's bigger and it's out there. Incorporate that into your operating system, your metabolism, then be loving, be loved.